The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com.
So much international news to talk to you about today. We'll start in Venezuela and then go to Ukraine. We're still working with our source in Venezuela, whose identity we are protecting. And after having a few more exchanges with our source, while at first I thought, and maybe he thought, that we were being overly cautious, he now has said, no, I think it's good that you're not even saying what city I'm in, because the situation here is really getting quite bad. Let's get you up to speed on what's happening in Venezuela. There are continued protests from opposition groups which vary in terms of their placement on the political spectrum and the reasons they are protesting the Nicolas Maduro government. The primary opposition complaints right now, the reason these protests are happening are, number one, general lack of security in the country. And this comes in terms of both safety, physical security, and economic security. Inflation, 56% by some estimates in 2013. Significant inflation, and the opposition movement and protesters, which initially started with students protesting the out-of-control inflation in Venezuela, and protests over the scarcity of basic goods like milk, sugar, in some cases toilet paper. On February 12th, student groups started the protests, and then opposition, more formal opposition groups led by a few different parties, which I outlined to you on our Monday program, joined in, and the protests grew relatively peacefully. Then there was a significant confrontation in the capital city of Caracas, and 2 students and 1 government sympathizer died, and this significantly escalated tensions and really brought the protest and the entire conflict to a new level. As we mentioned, this led to the government blaming the opposition as being fascist right-wingers, although, as we explained, this is factually wrong. The opposition, as those who are pro-government, range from liberal to centrist to conservative. Now, the latest news is that Leopoldo Lopez, who is I don't know if I want to use the term de facto, but he is considered by many to be the opposition leader, or at least the spokesperson for the opposition in great part. According to one source, he was supposedly initially detained for murders that he didn't commit, but was being blamed for causing in some way, shape, or form. The latest that I got from a combination of Venezuelan sources and news running in Argentina right now is that he's in a maximum security holding facility. The legal process against him may continue with him kind of out on bail, as it were, or temporarily freed, or it may continue with him detained. The other bit of information we're getting is that an associate of Leopoldo Lopez named Carlos Vecchio may be detained soon if he has not already been detained, and he is an opposition member from, remember that coalition opposition party I told you about, Mesa de la Unidad? They are a coalition group that ranges, they include socialists, Marxists, social democrats, more centrist individuals. He may be detained as well, possibly he would be accused of an attempted coup or a takedown of the government, even though it's not really clear at all that that's the direction this is going. Now, Nicolas Maduro, the president of Venezuela, has accused the United States of financing the opposition specifically to destabilize the country under the premise that the U.S. wants to remove such a left-wing regime. The last thing on this, I hesitate to call it a revolution. What I really want to call it is the uprising that is taking place right now is being accused of being like a McRevolution, as it's being termed, meaning it's not really a grassroots uprising, but it is fueled by it's AstroTurf, essentially. And we do know that because of WikiLeaks documents that were leaked, specifically some emails, Cato, as well as a group called Canvas, were involved in pushing for a revolution in Venezuela years back, and there's no reason to think that they're completely uninvolved now, but we need to separate that, Lewis, from the reality that there are forces on the ground along the political spectrum that want to see the current administration go.
Right. I wouldn't surprise me, of course, if there was money behind this, if there were other interests involved. I mean, why wouldn't there be? It's an opportunity for a lot of people. But yeah, like you said, there are all sorts of different political groups and people across the political spectrum on the ground who do want change and who are upset, and we have to consider them too.
That's the latest we have in Venezuela. We'll continue to cover it. We will continue to be in touch with our sources there and hope to keep everybody up to speed. This is when we do international stories, sometimes the audience doesn't care at all. The reaction to Venezuela and to Ukraine, which we'll talk about in a second, seems to be overall, some people say, David, I really don't care about either of these countries, but overall the sense is that our audience is very interested in what's going on there. Let's go now to Ukraine, where huge fires and explosions in Kiev coincided with just an incredible night of violence, and we'll show you some video from Kiev. 25 dead in Kiev, protesters stoking what they're calling a ring of fire, separating themselves from the riot police in some kind of final effort to defend a stage on Independence Square. And this has been a focal point of the protests that have now lasted about 3 months. Ukraine's health ministry said that 25 people, including police officers, protesters, and a journalist, were found dead on a side street near the square, and that they had been killed after hundreds of riot police officers advanced on anti-government demonstrators and also on subsequent street fights that were going on nearby. The health ministry also saying that 241 people were injured and that 9 of the dead were police officers. The Interior Ministry said all the police officers died from gunshot wounds, but witnesses said that it appeared many of the officers were simply trapped in a burning armored vehicle. This is the worst violence now in the 3+ months of the protests. This has essentially paralyzed Kiev. Tourists posting pictures from their hotels surrounding Independence Square and just huge fires in the square. And for people who are kind of following this very loosely, very tangentially, this is as if you were, I don't know. I don't know what's a good analogy, but if you were in New York City and you were in a hotel near Washington Square Park, where Fifth Avenue starts, and Washington Square Park is just on fire, right? I mean, this is a very serious and active, I call it an explosive situation, and that's literally what it is.
Yeah, it is. This is crazy. I can't imagine what it's like to look out your window and see that. And I think the barometer for a lot of Americans is, well, when do our senators start mentioning it? Or when does the president mention it? And I don't know if it will come to that. I mean,
let's qualify that a little bit. Mentioning it as the topic of a primary communique to the government, because certainly it has been mentioned by our lawmakers, and right, they're very actively involved. But I see what you're saying. Mentioning it as the president is speaking about Ukraine. Let's listen. That type of thing.
Right, that type of thing. And we know how long it took for Syria to come up in that way.
Yeah.
Things had to get really, really bad. So we'll just keep our eyes on it.
Remember, this stems back to an uprising against Yanukovych in Ukraine over the influence that, so let's see, how can I reframe this? There was a possibility of Ukraine aligning itself more with the European Union as opposed to more with Eastern European influence. The initial protest was from Ukrainians who felt that they preferred an alignment, a trade alignment between the Ukraine and the EU, rather than more closely aligning with the forces and influence of Vladimir Putin. And this has now expanded to be a much broader umbrella under which Ukrainians are protesting. We will continue following it. The situation there is changing by the hour, and it's a very, very fluid situation. Let's talk a little bit about marijuana legalization. We haven't talked about this for a week or two on the program, and one of the big issues that was facing pot businesses, legal pot businesses, for example, in Colorado, where recreational use of marijuana was legalized by popular vote, is that banks, American banks, were still not allowed to do any kind of business with the pot shop. So even if the pot shop was legal, banks were not allowed to allow the pot shops to open bank accounts. They were not allowed to loan money, even though those businesses were legal. That is now changing. As Yahoo Finance is reporting, the Obama administration is going to allow banks to do business with licensed marijuana companies with a reduced fear of criminal prosecution, assuming the banks meet a series of different conditions. This is what the U.S. Justice Department said. They are preparing written guidance which would stop short of promising immunity for the banks, but it makes clear at the same time that if they avoid any participation or kind of turning a blind eye to money laundering or other crimes, and that if they do cooperate with regulators, they will be allowed to do business with legal marijuana entities. This is just obvious. I understand that the law is fluid right now because this is a new legalization, but there is absolutely no legal justification to prevent banks from doing business with legal businesses.
Yeah, it was. I don't really know what would be the point of that at this point. It just seems like you're holding everyone back, and there's no real benefit to not allowing this to happen. So it just makes perfect sense.
We have to then open up, and this is a conversation which we've actually been trying to have with experts on the topic. What about prostitution? Prostitution, much like marijuana use, is practiced everywhere. And there are very significant negative side effects that come as a result of prostitution being illegal. Slavery, abuse, crimes against prostitutes that go drastically underreported because nobody wants to admit that they were involved in prostitution in the first place. And some say, I have not taken a position on this yet, some say that if we legalized and regulated prostitution, it would make it significantly safer as well, and it would provide potentially another revenue source for the government. We want to have a debate on this program on that specific issue. We've actually, Lewis, been struggling to find advocates for the two sides. You've been working on lining up a debate on this for a while, and we just have trouble finding representatives for both sides that will agree to participate in a debate with each other. So if the audience has suggestions, that's really a conversation we're interested in having on the show, isn't it?
Oh yeah, definitely. I had trouble with that. I thought it would be easier, but it's an uphill battle.
So we're going to keep working on that, and we will, of course, follow the legal and financial repercussions, I guess we could say, of marijuana legalization. And a lot of other states also now thinking of measures to legalize or decriminalize, and we'll cover those as well. Let's talk about a hijacked commercial flight. The most bizarre thing about this is that the hijacker was the co-pilot. This is an Ethiopian Airlines co-pilot who hijacked a plane that was bound for Rome and then flew it instead to Geneva, where, according to officials, the co-pilot wanted to seek asylum. There are many Ethiopians who are very interested and in some cases desperate to seek asylum in other countries. The co-pilot thinking, I will hijack the plane of this government-run airline and try to get myself to Geneva. It did not work particularly well. This was a Boeing 767 with about 200 passengers and crew. It took off from the Ethiopian capital and landed in Geneva later than it was supposed to land in Rome. And the most interesting thing about this is that the Yahoo News report about this hijacking said that those on board didn't realize that a hijacking had taken place because the plane was flying normally just to a different destination. However, there's a huge Reddit Ask Me Anything that was done where one of the passengers on the flight said, that is flat out wrong. We were fully aware that the plane had been hijacked. We were sitting there, it was about midnight, and then the oxygen masks drop. We thought it was some kind of a glitch because the plane there was no turbulence, there was no reason to think that we needed those oxygen masks. Shortly after that, we hear a very creepy voice over the intercom saying the plane has been taken over, and then there are some significant descents and ascents, and the plane is changing altitude. And then this is the most incredible thing, 6 hours of normal flying, during which at least some of the passengers, including the guy who did the Reddit Ask Me Anything, said, "We thought we were just waiting to die." And imagine that, Lewis, 6 hours on a hijacked plane. Seemingly everything is normal on the plane, except that you know it's been hijacked, and you assume it's eventually going to be crashed in some kind of 9/11 type situation. That has to be absolute torture.
Yeah, that is not a pleasant situation, but I wish we had a bit more information. It's interesting that this pilot chose Switzerland. I recently just read that Switzerland is considering closing its doors pretty much to immigrants. And now this guy is seeking asylum there. Very strange story.
A few minutes after landing in Geneva, the co-pilot left the cockpit using a rope and then went directly to the police forces that were surrounding the plane. He announced, "I am the hijacker of this plane." It's not immediately clear why specifically he wanted asylum, but as I said, there are many asylum seekers in Ethiopia. Just horror. I don't know what I would do if I was on the plane. The pilot had been locked out of the cockpit when he went to the bathroom. That's when the co-pilot locked him out and hijacked the plane. So if the pilot doesn't even think that they're able to get back into the cockpit to take control, I don't know what I would have done for those 6 hours on that flight.
Yeah, I wonder if this will somehow change security measures on a plane. I mean, now maybe perhaps you will have some type of, I don't know, access code that lets you get in from, the passenger side or something like that. I don't know.
Yeah, let's take a break. Next, we will talk Patriot Mail. I also want to talk about a elected official who threw his kid. Don't worry, he's pro-family and he's also pro-life, so nothing to worry about there. We'll take a break. A lot more coming up today. Glad you're with us.
The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com. Welcome back to the David Pakman Show.
You can support the David Pakman Show for free by doing all of your Amazon shopping through the link on our website. Go to davidpakman.com. Right side of the website, there's a banner that takes you to Amazon. Click on the link and then bookmark the link. If you use that bookmark when you shop at Amazon, Amazon sends us 7% of your purchase. This really can add up. Just use it, bookmark it, use it whenever you want, and you don't even have to think about it. You'll be supporting the show, which you can also do by being a part of the David Pakman Show membership program. It's made possible in part by liberalbias.com, which shows you how to unskew uncomfortable facts so that they fit nicely into your conservative worldview. Learn the latest ways to unskew reality at liberalbias.com. Today's new member of the day is Andrew Cannon. Andrew, thank you for being a David Pakman Show member. Andrew gets a whole bunch of great membership perks, including access to the bonus show hosted by producer Lewis, where I am the sidekick. You can go to davidpakman.com/membership to access that. Patriot Mail today. What is Patriot Mail? This is Patriot Mail.
Patriot Mail. Your break from the tyranny of unbiased, independent media. Because knowledge and information are just communist conspiracies. Patriot Mail, written by patriots who hate David Pakman. Because America. And because freedom.
So today's Patriot Mail, I always try to come up with some kind of a name for it. You know, the Young Turks edition, when we're being criticized for being part of the Young Turks network, or the Nazi Jews edition, which is every other one where I'm called both a Nazi and a Jew. Today, I am calling the Nobody Likes You edition of Patriot Mail. I think that that's an appropriate name, and let's listen and let's read along if you're watching today.
David Pakman is a liberal, narrow-minded little boy trying to play news commentator. It is obvious that this man does not love his country, nor is he interested if a news channel is telling the truth. I bet he watches MSNBC for the Obama cheerleaders. That's why he has only 144 people that like him.
Yeah, I don't know where that number comes from. 144 people that like us. I don't know. The other funny thing is there are still so many. I think I should take it as a compliment, Lewis. I'm 30 years old, and there's still so many comments about a little boy. A little boy. I guess it's a compliment that I just have a youthful appearance.
Yeah, that could be it. Or perhaps they just think you're really immature. I don't know. But if I thought we had a lot of haters, but if only 140 something people like you, David, the number of haters we have has got to be a world record.
Yeah, because our ratio of people who like this show to people who hate it is incredibly low. Because if we have 144 people that like this show, and then we have, I mean, if you look at our YouTube channel and the emails we get and tweets and Hatred Mail, thousands and thousands of people who really dislike the show. I don't even know how the show stays on the air since everybody hates it.
Good question. I don't know, but I guess haters can support a program as much as people who love it.
A pro-family Republican has been charged with felony assault for throwing his 4-year-old daughter. Rest assured, he is pro-family. No cause for concern there at all. This is Montana State Senator Jason Priest, who was hit with a variety of charges, which include felony assault on a minor and misdemeanor counts of partner or family member assault and a resisting arrest. Here's the list of what he allegedly did. He threw his 4-year-old daughter. He shoved his estranged wife. He broke her boyfriend's rib and fought with the officer who showed up to intervene in the domestic disturbance. The documents reveal that the little girl has a swollen 1-inch bump on her head after the incident. The throwing his daughter accusation has been corroborated by their 2 other children who were also at the house that day. Priest is denying that he threw his daughter, but he admits he shouldn't have fought with the police officer when the police officer showed up. According to documents, he also thinks he was correct to forcibly remove his wife and her boyfriend from his property, saying he would effing do it again. Okay. I was really concerned about this guy and really about his demeanor and his position as an elected official. But then I read that he's not only pro-family, he's also pro-life. So we don't have to worry about him.
No, David, this is just, I don't know what this is an example of. I guess someone just protecting their sovereign property as a sovereign entity, right?
He was just exercising his rights to be a sovereign citizen. As I read this story about this guy who is, of course, pro-family and pro-life, I was thinking about him throwing his daughter allegedly and breaking his estranged wife's boyfriend's rib. And the question I came up with was, what was that really good argument from the pro-family groups against same-sex marriage again?
Which one? There were so many great ones, David.
The idea that this is the reason we need to keep marriage between men and women only, and same-sex marriages are violating the sanctity of marriage is really completely laughable, as is the concept of pro-family. I mean, we've been ridiculing that for, at this point, probably 5 years.
Yeah, it's true. This is a great story. It highlights a lot of what we try to encapsulate about these people, but hey, his argument would probably be like, hey, I didn't kill anybody, so I guess he's still pro-life, right?
Right. He was very much for the life of his daughter while she was a fetus. After she was born, though, throwing her that's not at all any impingement on pro-life ideology. This is going to sound like the exact same story we did on Monday, which sounded like the exact same story we did the week before, but yet another big banker has apparently committed suicide. This one is also from JP Morgan. Remember that former Federal Reserve economist Mike Duker was found dead in an apparent suicide near Tacoma, Washington. Then 58-year-old former senior executive at Deutsche Bank, William Brexmit, was found in his home after an apparent suicide. Then the managing director of Tata Motors, Carl Slim, was found dead on the 4th floor of a hotel in Bangkok of an apparent suicide. Then Gabriel McGee, 39 years old, vice president at JP Morgan Chase London, was found after apparently jumping to his own death in the Canary Wharf area of UK. And now a second JP Morgan employee, then On Monday, we had news of a second JP Morgan employee found dead after he fell from the bank's London headquarters. That's Ryan Crane. And then now, a 33-year-old man, this is the new one, a 33-year-old man plunged to his death yesterday from the roof of a 30-story building in Hong Kong's financial district, which houses the Asia headquarters for JP Morgan. The police say at around 2 p.m., a man fell from the rooftop of the building. Police arrived and saw him unconscious. He was sent to the hospital where he was certified dead. JP Morgan has not yet confirmed that he was an employee, but all other reports indicate that he was a JP Morgan employee. I'm at a loss for words. The reaction to our story on Monday asking, well, one possibility is they are committing suicide because of something they know about that's going to happen, some kind of banking collapse, a big takedown. That was one possibility. Another possibility is that these are not really suicides, that these guys are being killed because of something they know or could expose. Another audience member suggested, they could be suicides, but they are suicides because they feel really guilty about the role that the big banking industry and Wall Street has had in destroying people's lives. I just don't think that it would all happen at once if that were the case.
Yeah, no, I think something else is going on here. It's every time we report on another suicide, it just gets more fascinating to me.
Right.
And
It's yet another isolated suicide with no signs of foul play. How many times can we report that story before we just want to have some kind of a sense of what's happening?
Right. Honestly, at this point, if I had any stock, I'd be thinking it's probably time to sell all of it.
This reminds me of I don't know if anybody has been watching the new Sherlock series on BBC where Benedict Cumberbatch plays Sherlock Holmes. There's an episode there where there is a string of suicides which Sherlock Holmes investigates, and they aren't actually suicides. This story is following much of that a fictional story, reminded me of it. It's not unheard of that during recessions, suicide rates go up among bankers, among accountants, etc. During the oil crisis and the recession of the 1980s, bankers were killing themselves on a weekly basis, but that seemed to be a slightly different situation than this one, unless we're just on the cusp of something that they know about and we don't yet.
Right. That's what I find to be the most fascinating thing. I mean, what could possibly be going on behind the scenes that would cause this? And if it was that big, would we have heard about it yet? I don't know.
Join us on Facebook, facebook.com/David Pakman Show, and also chat with us, send us ideas, discuss the show on our new Reddit subreddit. Go to reddit.com/r/The David Pakman Show, or just click the Reddit banner on our website, davidpakman.com.
The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com. Welcome back to the David Pakman Show.
Okay, we're down to the last 6 days on our Indiegogo campaign. The program that you are listening to or watching today started in 2005. It was once every other week. We have been able to expand that program to a weekly show, to a twice weekly show, and back in March of 2012 to a 4 times a week show. The last frontier, so to speak, is becoming a true daily program which will allow us to directly compete and pitch ourselves against so much of the corporate programming that is on TV and radio by going to 5 days a week. We need your help in order to do this. We had an initial funding goal of $35,000 for this campaign. I am thrilled to say that we are just a few $100s away from the $20,000 mark. This campaign is already the most successful funding campaign that we have ever done, and we are only $2,500 away from it being the most successful total fundraising for a year that we have had. In 2013, you may remember, earlier in the year, we did 2 different Indiegogo campaigns, which together raised about $22,000. We are on the cusp of having this one campaign, and remember, it is still February, from eclipsing the total fundraising of 2013. And this does not count some individual contributors that are outside of the Indiegogo system. So I can't tell you how excited I am that the program has grown to a point where we can go to our audience and say, we need to raise this amount of money, and that we can even come close and raise this amount of money. It's just incredible that we've been able to create this thing where, sadly, and I do say this sadly, 98% of the programs that started when we did back in 2005, or even in 2006, 7, 8, 9, 10, 98% of those programs are gone or have such lack of funding that they have completely dried up, while we are, I'm so thrilled to say, bigger than ever. Every month we are slightly bigger. The campaign is really going well. Now, Lewis, we just need the last 6 days to be continued momentum.
Right. Hopefully. So far, so good. We've been doing well, and 5 days a week is going to be, it's going to be huge, David. The sky's the limit here. It's scary to think how many more people might have to look at your hair on a daily basis.
I'm scared. I'll tell you, I'm definitely scared about that.
Yeah, it's a nightmare, really.
Okay, so well, that aside, to refocus really on what's relevant here, 6 days left. We have a matching contributor who is matching contributions until we reach the $20,000 mark. As of right now, that's about $750 that are left. The next $750 that is contributed will be matched dollar for dollar by an anonymous contributor who has offered to do that. And then we will be really in the home stretch. Any ideas you have for perks? We've added at this point 3 perks based on the suggestions of our audience. Please let us know what we can do to draw in more contributions. How do you donate? Very easy. davidpakman.com, top of the page, blue banner, Indiegogo. That's it. It's very easy. Go to our website, davidpakman.com, and click on the Indiegogo banner. And thanks to the 200 and, as of right now, 248 individual funders for this campaign, it's incredible. I want to talk about Joe the Plumber. Joe the Plumber has not come up on this show for a while. Joe the Plumber is a big anti-union guy. Joe the Plumber campaigned on being self-sufficient and paying less taxes and businesses really being independent and doing what they want to do. Now, unfortunately, it turned out Joe the Plumber, number one, wasn't actually a licensed plumber. And number two, didn't have a plumbing business that profited $250,000 a year. Those things weren't true. The basis under which Joe the Plumber became known, being a plumber and having a plumbing business, was a lie. It was all a lie. However, he was still somehow the darling of the John McCain campaign in 2008 when he lost to President Obama. The latest news, which Nephi sent to me, it's written about in the Toledo Blade and on Daily Kos, is that Joe the Plumber, anti-union Joe the Plumber, has now taken a union job at Chrysler. Joe the Plumber, whose real name is Samuel Wurzelbacher, had to get a job that involves something other than pretending to be this blue-collar Republican speaking guy who's just on the cusp of buying that $250,000 plumbing business. He now is going to be working at Chrysler, which of course is a United Auto Workers union job. He got very, very defensive on Facebook about why he's taking a union job, even though it violates all of his principles. He said, hey, in order to work for Chrysler, you are required to join the union, in this case, the UAW. There's no choice. It's a union shop. The employees voted to have it that way, and in America, that's the way it is, which is just such a pathetic hedge. Number one, it's not true that you have to be in the union. You have to pay your union dues, but you don't actually have to join the union. So if he really wanted to, he could say, listen, the voters voted, the workers voted that we have to pay the dues, but I am against unions. I want nothing to do with the union, and I'm staying out of the union. I'm refusing their representation. He's not doing that, Lewis.
Right. Yeah, of course. He knows that there are benefits to being in the union. And I mean, Why wouldn't you in this specific situation?
He also hedged further by saying, hey, you know what? Private unions like the UAW, that's a choice between employees and employers. If that's what they want, then who am I to say you can't have it? As opposed to public unions, right? Somehow this whole, who am I to say I'm just Joe the plumber thing, that wasn't flying when he was on the campaign trail for John McCain. He wasn't taking any of this. Who am I to say what other people should do? He was taking a very different approach, saying, I am the guy to say what other people should do. So that's changed completely. You know what, though? I think if you actually ask him and just honestly have a conversation with him where he's not worried about who will report it, he's probably grateful to have a union job right now.
They're probably grateful to have a job in general, I would say.
Maybe the explanation is this, Lewis. Obama's economy is so bad that I had to take a job that was a union job because of the socialist conspiracy created by President Obama.
That's a good one. That's a really good one. But, I kind of feel bad for Joe the plumber. Ever since 2008, it's just been one embarrassment after another.
Yeah, it's been pretty bad. The most embarrassing thing was that if your name's Joe the plumber, you should be a licensed plumber. That's just a fundamental thing. Let's take a break. We will talk spanking next. It's not what you think. Lewis, trust me, it's not what you think. Don't get yourself all worked up. And then we'll also have some of your voicemail.
The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com. The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com.
There's a bill in the Kansas House of Representatives that would allow the stronger spanking of children by teachers and caregivers. Topeka, Kansas is the home of the Kansas state legislature, and a Kansas lawmaker, Gail Finney, who's a Democrat, by the way, is proposing a bill which would allow teachers, caregivers, and parents to spank children hard enough to leave marks. The bill would also allow parents to give permission to others to spank their children. Gail Finney, the Democrat from Wichita, says he wants to allow up to 10 strikes of the hand, and that could leave redness and bruising. It would continue to ban hitting a child with a closed fist and in the head or body or with a belt or switch. Finney says she wants to restore. You know what? Is Finney a guy or a girl? I honestly can't tell. This AP article uses he half the time and she half the time. Maybe Lewis knows.
You keep going. I'm going to look that up real quick.
Okay. In any case, Finney wants to restore parental rights and improve discipline. KCTV is reporting that Congressman John Rubin, who's chairman of the House Corrections and Juvenile Justice Committee, says he's not so sure this is a bill that the committee even wants to consider. Finney has 3 sons and 4 grandchildren and plans to introduce the legislation again in the next legislative session if the committee doesn't take up the bill.
Finney is a rather young-looking African-American woman.
Okay, so there we go. Parents do have to give permission to the school or caregiver to do the spanking. Who would do this? Who would give permission to caregivers or teachers to hit your kids? I know people do. Remember that spanking increases the odds that the child will have mental illness. It also increases the odds that the kid will be conservative, as we know from authoritarian upbringing studies. Lewis, if you accidentally had a kid, if all worked out right, if the stars aligned such that you probably loved the kid, would you allow teachers to spank the kid?
No, David, I think if any teacher or caregiver spanked my kid, I would probably spank them in the face with my fist.
Here's an idea to the Kansas politicians who are into this, and to Ms. Finney. Why don't you go create a job instead of slightly modifying the parameters of how parents, teachers, and caregivers can or cannot spank kids? What about creating a job? What about funding some alternative energy research? What about doing something even remotely productive?
David, how about just improving the education of those kids instead of spanking them?
Yeah, right. What if we figured out a way to teach them something instead of modifying the spanking parameters for teachers? I know it's crazy. This is a crazy way to put time and money into children, but maybe spanking parameters are a better thing. Big news out of the South. Virginia is the first southern state to overturn their gay marriage ban. Now, when I say southern state, I know people will say, hold on, David, some of California is in the South and New Mexico is in the South. What we mean by the first southern state is the southeast of the United States, the very conservative southeast of the United States. A federal judge in Norfolk struck down unconstitutional Virginia's ban on same-sex marriage. The first southern state, and we always think about Alabama and Mississippi when we say, well, the momentum is building for marriage equality, but it's hard to imagine states like Mississippi or Alabama ever going in a different direction. If there is legal judicial momentum, and if judges in places like Virginia look at it and say, you know what, with the partial repeal of DOMA and with increased marriage equality across the country, legally justified by state courts, I don't think there's a legal justification for these bans. I think we may see the overturning in places like Alabama and Mississippi.
Eventually, I would assume so. I mean, let's say Alabama is the last state and every other state has deemed the ban unconstitutional. How could they possibly hold out legally in that case? It would seem to make no sense. And that at that point, there might even be a federal mandate.
The judge involved, Judge Arenda Wright Allen, said that there is nothing about denying same-sex marriages that makes legitimate government interests. I love this. Have you ever heard of a more conservative, libertarian argument for why there should be no ban on same-sex marriage? It doesn't serve a government interest. It might serve religious interests. It might serve the personal interest of people who seem to think that there's something different about the relationship between two men who are in love versus a man and a woman, but it serves absolutely no government interest. This is such a conservative argument for same-sex marriage, and I love it.
And since when do these people care if something like that would serve a government interest? I mean, they're about small government, right? I mean, this should have nothing to do with government. This is about personal freedom, which they claim to be all about.
Yeah, they claim to. That's exactly right. That's the key word, Lewis. Let's go to voicemails. 219-2-DAVID-P. Here's an interesting voicemail that I want to address. Listen to this.
Yeah, David, I'm a little confused here. One day I watch a video of you, and you say that it's not a freedom of speech issue. When a school suspends someone for wearing a Confederate flag, yeah, it's a freedom of speech issue if they don't want an atheist club at a school.
Okay, let's stop right there. Let's analyze that so far. If you have religious groups at schools and you single-handedly say you can't have an atheist group, but the Christian group is okay, that's wrong. You either have no groups related to religion or lack of religion, or you allow all groups. The issue of not wearing Confederate flags in school, the story that's being referenced, the Confederate flag was understood by the school district to be an intimidatory symbol, and as such was banned. It has nothing to do with either allowing or not allowing religious groups. Let's continue.
Why I don't think it should be at the school, because I think atheists naturally try to come off as smarter than other people. They think just because they don't believe in religion, they're all of a sudden better and smarter than other people. And I think in their mind, they think it gives them the right to bully other people.
Listen to this. Listen to this. Because you personally perceive atheists to think of themselves as smarter, you think that there should be discrimination against an atheist group from being created. Have you ever heard of a more capricious, arbitrary and ridiculous argument against an atheist group when Christian groups are allowed. And by the way, there's no Christian bullying in this country, Lewis.
Yeah, the bullying thing. Okay, well, one could argue that Christians have been the world's biggest bullies for 2,000 years. There is bullying on both sides. I'll give you that, but you can't.
But that's not the issue.
I know, but you can't. I was just going to say you can't take an instance or two of atheists bullying people and say that all atheists are guilty of this, just like you can't do it with Christians.
Right, and I wonder if this caller would consider the fact that the only religious holiday that is a federal holiday happens to be a Christian one. Isn't that imposing Christianity on people? I mean, come on, this is just such a pathetic voicemail. I can't tell if it's a parody or not, but judging from, I think this person's called before, I don't think they leave parodies. I think they're serious about this stuff. That's it for today. Excellent bonus show today. A brain implant lets one monkey control another. We'll talk about barbecue knowledge and much more. DavidPakman.com/membership. Don't miss today's bonus show.
The David Pakman Show at DavidPakman.com.